All right, where we left off, we were talking about the scales for our plot. And we had an X and a Y and a color scale. We had talked about margins. We had set up functions for getting the weight and the fuel efficiency, and we had talked about how to read in the data. Now we're going to talk about what's going on here. So in this particular case, we're using the map function to convert our data values to the values that we will get in the pixel space. So that's what we're taking these functions, these scale functions, and we're applying them to our X value and our Y values from the data, and then we're holding cylinders just as they were. So if I quickly open the server and open the inspection tools and look at the console, this is the original data. This is the translation. You can see how all the values for X and Y now are in translated values because they're in values of pixel space now. Meanwhile, cylinders remains in quotes because that's going to be our categorical variable that's going to be mapped to the color scale. Okay, let's go back. So that's what's going on here. We're basically creating a copy of the data set here, but in this case, we are going ahead and actually mapping the points to their new values. So we've gone from the data space to the pixel space, and we've actually saved it as a data object. Great. Now that means instead of calling the original data, we can actually call these points that are in new pixel space. And we select all circles because we're doing Scatterplot. And our data are points as opposed to the data because I called them points. Then we join the circles. So create a selection for all circles, bind the data, join circles to the SVG, and then for the circles we need CX, CY, and radius. So this allows us to manipulate things like the actual size of the circles. And remember, attributes take either a constant or a function. So in this case, we're saying d.x and d.y from the points data object. And then for the fill, we will reference the categorical variable in our function with the myColorScale. We'll add some opacity, so we'll make a little bit of a transparency here just in case there's any overplotting. If there isn't much. It's a really small data set. And then we'll add a border line around the circles that is black. Then we will, at the margin left, we will append our new axis. We will use one of the sort of factory functions for axes from D3. And this is going to be pretty typical for a Cartesian coordinate plane. You're going to usually use something like axis left and axis bottom. That's the sort of typical orientation for a plot like this. But we've got these translations. We've got to transform, translate. Oops. And remember, we talked about this in class. this $ braces allows us to put JavaScript into this transform attribute and then be interpreted as a string. So we can perform JavaScript and we can use our objects here, and then it'll get turned into the string that this transform attribute wants. Right? Normally this is just a left, right, up, down translation, moving something. In this case, we want to specifically tell it to use our left margin number here for the move. And then we call our axis left function for y. Do the same thing for the translate of the axis for the y-axis, for the x-axis, but because the baseline is for it to be at the top, we're actually going to, and the SVGs are sort of upside down, you might say, in the y-axis. We'll actually say the transform here is going to be on the y location. It's going to be height minus margin bottom. So it's going to take you all the way to the bottom of the plot and then subtract the margin from the bottom. Finally, add some text and make it be a title. We'll again append a group, append some text. We'll call the text object that we created, the text variable that we created, and then add x and y. And so x, this will approximately center it. We could also use an anchoring to make sure that it's where it's supposed to be. And then for the y, we want it at the margin top. This has no reason to be here. That was just remnants from something else. And that's the end of this particular plot. So all that together gives us this particular plot. Now you see the scaling here is just a little bit off on the x and the y, so we might want to actually change a little bit about the range and the domain for those scales, but we'll do that in a future video. Okay, stop there.